Do I sound like
silly
I know
as
what
I
I'm
feel.
doing? Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to start right up.
Sure.
Tell us your name.
Thomas Evan Hill III.
And Thomas, you had to start as a chemist at Pratt & Lambert.
Actually, I started as a chemist with Mary Carter Paints in Tampa, Florida. And then I worked for Harris Paints in Tampa, Florida. And then in 1975, I was recruited to go to work for the Pratt & Lambert Corporation in Buffalo, New York, from Tampa, Florida. When I took the employment physical, the physician, there was a section for intelligence, and he wrote questionable because I moved from Tampa to Buffalo. So I started Pratt & Lambert in 1975, yes.
How many years at Pratt & Lambert?
Let's see, Pratt & Lambert was sold in 1996, so it would have been 21 years at P&L. And I started as a research chemist and had a number of different positions. Actually, I never had the same job for 2 years straight. And when the company was sold, I was a group vice president for research. And I had responsibility for all the trade sales businesses.
Can you tell me your relationship to Cellutone and Vitrolite?
I actually was a chemist responsible for formulating them. Now, they had been introduced well before I went to work for Pratt & Lambert, but in my first job with Pratt & Lambert, I was responsible for oil-based coatings, 38 clear finish, Farmore, Cellutone, Vitrolite, Permalize, Effecto, those finishes.
You know, we did a historic home here in Seattle last year. It's called the Norvell home. It says Swiss Chalet. And when it came down to test products, we actually used Cellutone.
Yeah.
Because it's really the last of the animals that gives us the sheen that we want in the performance.
Yeah, it's funny. I always felt that Cellutone's name was pretty humorous because its name is Cellutone Satin, a semi-gloss enamel. That's the official name. It's Cellutone Satin. So the names didn't really mean anything in terms of the sheens or anything like that. But yeah, when Pratt & Lambert manufactured our own alkyd resins, so that was one of the reasons we were able to design products that fit what we wanted them to do. A lot of other people, you buy commercial alkyds and then you try to get them to work. We manufactured our own, so we could tweak them to do anything we wanted to do.
So after a long run at Pratt & Lambert, working in the different coatings and obviously seeing what a VP and a chemist has to deal with, what the market will bear, what buyers are interested in buying, and then developing those products. Obviously, that led you down the road of starting,
C2.
where you're at today. C2. So can you talk briefly about the way, the inspiration, and about C2, because that's what people are interested in.
Well, I was in 1996. There was a management group of 14 that ran the Pratt & Lambert Corporation. We were a $550 million company, and I was one of that management group. And when Sherwin-Williams bought the company, they got rid of all but 4 of those people immediately. Like the day they took over, 10 of those people were gone immediately. And they kept me and said they wanted me to continue to work for them. I worked for Sherwin-Williams for about 9 months with a sign on my forehead that said redundant resource and a target on my chest. So 9 months later, they called and said, we really don't need you anymore. Thank you. Here's your severance. So I needed to do something. I had noticed through the years that the brewing industry consolidated fairly rapidly, and that spawned a bunch of microbreweries. And the most successful of those microbreweries was Sam Adams. And I felt that there was room in the trade sales portion of the business for a specialty company like a microbrewery. And since I knew what sold, I knew where the costs were, I knew, what, everything about the intricacies of manufacturing, I felt that we had an opportunity to create this kind of a niche business. So we got 8 to 10 dealers together in Chicago, talked about it and said, okay, let's put a business plan together. 3-4 months later, we got together in Calgary, Alberta, and said, look, if we're going to do this, each of us is going to throw in 50 grand and we're going to get moving on this company. And we decided to do that, so the company started in January of 1999. So, and we've just grown from there. So we didn't start selling any paint until probably the end of 1999. And the first paints we sold were a contractor line. Color System came out in about, 2001. And, we've been successful since then.
So when you were doing your original business plan, did you create a SWOT? I think that's strengths, weaknesses, threats, and opportunities.
Yes, we did.
And this is the first I've heard of the Sam Adams model, but it totally makes sense. Where did you think, when you had your original 9 dealers and getting them to buy in and this launch, what did you see that as the first 5 years as C2? Who would be your clients and how would you guys be different?
We felt that the clientele would be designer-focused dealers, independent dealers, and only independent dealers who were interested in selling a really high-end product. And we felt that we didn't think there's a lot of room in the channel for that kind of a business model. And the reason I say that is you look at if you think of a bell curve, okay? And here on the left side of the bell curve is low price. Right side of the bell curve is high price. There's not a lot of area under the curve, under the tails on either side. So we knew there was not a tremendous amount of space available under there. But we felt there was probably $100 million worth of space available for us. There was probably $500 million total, and maybe $100 million for us is what we thought. So that's who we were targeting. That's who we were looking for, and those are the kind of businesses that we attracted. In the first, we were growing very, very nicely until Benjamin Moore discovered we were alive. And, all of a sudden they decided that they didn't want to, they sent a letter out to all of their distribution channel that said, if you take on the Coatings Alliance, we're going to pull the brand from you. And that kind of was that kind of put some water on our campfire. So
Tom, this is a beat up copy, but it's my favorite. And I know pretty soon it's going to be outdated because they're brand new colors that are going out, which we'll talk about in a second.
Right.
But I'd like you to dive right into what makes C2 unique, which is clearly these colors. From a brief background here in Seattle, we know that Daly's is the exclusive dealer of C2 paint in Seattle, and I'm kind of an old school painter. It takes me a while to change, so we were embedded with using the Color Key, Ameritone,
Sure.
and the Benjamin Moore.
Sure.
Because those 2 decks were in every architect's and designer's
Yeah.
drawer. One of the strongest design build companies in Seattle is JAS Design Build. And probably around 2001, their designers began to specify C2 colors. Number one, it's right up the street from, from Daly's Paint. But sometimes it takes me a while to kind of notice what's going on. But what I initially noticed was that the C2 color deck, which is much smaller in the number of colors, versus like, I won't name any names, but some of the color systems that have 800 colors, what people don't realize is that out of those 800 colors, it's really only 20% of the colors that are used all the time. The C2 color system, which I'll let you take the floor and talk about, all of these colors are individually selected by color people. And there's not that discrepancy where only 20% of them are used. Obviously, some of the whites, cotton,
Yeah.
wedding cake, stout is a strong color, C2 barnacle is a color that we use a lot. Can you just speak to...
Well, let me tell you about the genesis of the color system.
Thank you.
When we were putting the company together, my background is I am a chemist. I know how to formulate paint. I also manufactured colorant at Pratt & Lambert. Those people reported to me as well. And I recognize that anybody can spend the amount of money to make a really good paint. And that's kind of what a number of our competitors have done. They've introduced super premium paints that are very, very good paints, but they've spent more money on raw materials. We felt long term the way we could compete is on color. We also recognize that the majority of the color systems that are out there are generally let down color systems. So you have maybe 20% of the colors that are lighter, darker, but they're the same color, just lighter or darker. We decided that we wanted to have 496 colors, and the reason it's 496 is that that's how many fit in the color center. I mean, it's no deep dark secret or anything
It
like
wasn't a
that.
random number, 496.
No, we wanted chips to be a certain size, and the color center had to be usable by a 5'2" woman. So as far as you could reach up and reaching down, and as wide as you could do to get two people at the center, it worked out to 496 colors. So we developed 496 individual colors. We started from a perspective of what we defined as complexity with color. And what we define complexity to mean more than 3 colorants plus white. Now, I don't know if you call what goes into them pigments or colorants, or on the East Coast they call them pigments. I call them colorants. So it's individual colorants plus white. So it's more than 4. The reason we did that is because it's more interesting to your eye. All right, it's as the light changes throughout the day, it's more interesting to you. My son refers to this as a interesting palate. It tastes better. The more flavors in the palate, the individual flavors, the better the taste. I talk about it as music. I mean, if you hit middle C time after time after time, it's boring. You add another note, it's more interesting. You add more notes, it's even more interesting. We look at this as a concerto for your eyes. Now we've moved from what we referred to as
Tom, will you excuse me 1 second? I'm going to grab the colorant deck.
Sure.
That little section over again. Tom Hill, John Shear. Tom is the founder of C2 Paint, and I want to drill down directly into why C2 is unique. So as a little bit of background, I'm a painting contractor here in Seattle. I buy C2 Paint directly from the exclusive dealer of C2 Paint in Seattle, Daly's Paint. And it was probably around the early 2000s that I began to see the color being pinged by designers. A firm that we work with a lot, JAS Design Build, began to specify some of the C2 colors. And I had a long run of using Ameritone, the color key system, and of course the Benjamin Moore Classics, which is in every architect and designer's drawer. But the C2 paint started coming around, and what I first noticed was that there are not nearly as many colors. And I've always known that some of the bigger color systems, I think from a business perspective, these companies like to show lots of colors because it gives clients the idea of options. Although in my opinion, most of them are confusing. And when you look at a system that has 1,000 colors, only 20% of them are actually used. C2's color deck, lightweight compared to the rest. Also, 16 colorants to get to different color spaces.
Yeah.
You are the most qualified as the founder of the company to speak to that. Would you please?
When we put the company together, we believed that there's two things you can compete on. One's the quality of the product, the other's the color system. We felt that if some competitor wanted to spend enough money, they could match the quality of our products. And we've seen that happen over the years, where when we introduced our products, we were like this much better than everybody else. And now we've redone some formulas, so we're better, but it's not this much better. You know, they've improved the product performance. However, in terms of the colorant, the color system, we felt that we could do a better job. And because we had no legacy systems, we had no dispensing equipment in the field, we could do what we felt was best. So we did a worldwide technology search for colorants, and we chose colors that come from the CPS company, who are headquartered in Sittard, the Netherlands. Actually, the company's headquartered in Finland, but the colorant portion is in Sittard in the Netherlands. It's 16 colors, 16 individual colorants, as you can see.
Yeah, those are the older systems.
Yeah. 16 individual colorants. And we use these colors to produce 496 individual handcrafted colors. Handcrafted meaning that we just didn't take some spectrophotometer and match them. We did these things manually. We looked at them, we tweaked them. Did we like them? Didn't we like them? Did we, and that's how we put them together. Now, the colors, our philosophy was to be complex. Complex means that we use more than 3 of these pigments plus white to produce a color. That's what complex means. We now use a full spectrum approach, a complex full spectrum approach, which means we use more than 3 pigments plus white, but we also do not use black in tinting these things. So it's more of an artist palette. And we do this because my son would say it's a blend of flavors which is more interesting to your mouth. I talk about it as more of a, in terms of music, if you hit middle C time after time after time, it's kind of boring. You add another note, it's more interesting, a couple of more notes, it's even more interesting. So it's kind of like a concerto for your eyes while it's on the wall.
Is it a fair statement to say that you and your team, the original founders of C2, introduced the term full spectrum to the color lexicon?
Not really. Not really. That's because that full spectrum terminology really started on the East Coast.
There is no official definition of full spectrum.
There is no official definition of full spectrum. There isn't. But it really did start. It did start on the East Coast with
Kaufman.
Yeah, Donald Kaufman colors. That's really where it started, and everybody was doing something a little bit different. All right. Now, one of the other reasons we did this is we recognize that we can get a color spec'd, and someone can take it down the road to a competitor and try to knock off the color. But if you have a color, one of these colors like this, that let's say there's 7 different colorants that make up this color, it's virtually impossible to knock off. If you don't have a real good color sense and you don't care about color, yeah, you can knock it off. But if you care, it's almost impossible to knock off. The other thing we did when we put this color system together is fan decks and color cards and all of those things historically have been made out of lacquers. So there's all these disclaimer on these things that this is a representation of the color. The actual color is what you get in the can, da 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 da. Well, we made our color tools out of our paint. So this is our paint. So now it's our eggshell enamel. So it's what you see is what you get. We also recognize that now these chips on the fan deck are larger than the normal chips on a fan deck. But even if these being as large as they are, we recognize that it's been very difficult for people to make color selections. So we introduced something that we refer to as an ultimate paint chip, which is 18 by 24 inches. And that's something you can tape onto your wall, and you can move to different walls and determine whether you like the color or not. And we were unique in doing that. That's nobody had anything like that. So
An anecdote. You
Yeah.
know what a B-roll is? In a video, a B-roll is when I superimpose an image. So when you
Okay.
say that, you know, the super drawdown, I'm
Yeah.
going to show a picture of it.
I was gonna say, I didn't know if you had one or not. It'd be
Oh, yeah,
I have a really beat up one in the car that's not.
I'm going to put them, I'm going to introduce the image
sure,
right in the video.
sure. Now, do you want us to talk about, you haven't even seen this.
I do. I'm actually going to ask you, I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
We're actually filming. I'm going to ask you a question.
This will be the new ones.
And then we're going to, right after that, we'll cut it and then we'll do one for the
Okay.
new one. And
All
I'll
right.
ask you specifically. So,
All right.
I want you to address why no black. I think that's
okay.
really.
And I think he'll be able to answer it in my,
Okay.
in my color. So, Tom, I'd like you to, I think you're best to articulate. I use my own explanation for how to get to certain color spaces. So I'll use a real life story. One of my, a project that we did last year for a Seattle high rise on the 23rd floor, lots of natural light. I got a call from, she's a customer now, a previous customer, but her name is Professor Nancy Grote. And she really likes yellow. Yellow was in her previous house and she wanted it on the wall. She wanted warmth. And they had gone through a process of testing lots of colors. So she actually did a web search and found us. When you do a search in Seattle for Farrow and Ball, you find my company.
Sure.
And so she wanted some advice for colors. So I came out to help her. And once I saw some of her samples, and she had lots of yellows up, about 7 of them. And most of them were really too acidic. And I pointed her directly to a color within 5 minutes, which is C2 Moxie. I'm sure you're familiar with that color. And she asked me, well, how come can this be matched? And I said, probably not. But the best explanation I could give her is that there are more colorants in C2. They don't try to cut it with black. And there's also a high and a low yellow. So we're able to get, you know, all of our cabinets, all of our walls painted in that. But if that question were posed to you, how come these colors can't be matched, besides that we have unique colors? Can you drill down and maybe give a better explanation so that owners and designers might be able to better understand that?
The every color has a mathematical signature. And when you blend these mathematical signatures, you end up with a final color. All right? Now, you can't match that final mathematical signature unless you have the signatures that go into it. The way spectrophotometers work is they are generally a bridge spectrophotometer. So between the visual spectrum, they take 32 measurements, and then they curve fit between those measurements. Okay, that's the way they do it. Well, you can have a point that's between the measurement that maybe it's up here instead of on that line. And that's why if you don't have the actual mathematical equations of each of these colorants, you can't get something that matches.
So
Now-
essentially, you're saying because you, from the ground up, you're building these unique colorants, and there's a mathematical map,
Yep,
and these are certain points on the map
yep.
with your colorants, and you're trying to match them with a different colorant system, it just misses.
Yeah.
And you said earlier that there are some people that close is okay. I find that a lot of my clients, close is not okay.
Well, again, it's, you know, I've looked at things, I've seen, you know, knockoffs of our matches that I don't think are even close, and people have accepted them. You know, so color is perception, and some people are more astute in terms of perception than others. Just like, you know, some people have a real nose and palate for wines, fine wines. Fine wines would be totally wasted on me, okay? But other people can tell, you know, they can say, oh yeah, that's a da-da-da-da from da-da-da-da, from da. You know, I can't do any of that. I can do it for color. I can do that. You know, I have that kind of a sophisticated palate for color, but not for wine. And other, you know, people have different sophistications in their palates.
So Tom, there's some big news. There's a brand new color, there are new colors and a brand new color system. Will you tell us how it's different?
We have replaced all of these colors with new colorants. And the new colorants are you know, the primary focus of the new colorants was we wanted to make sure we had low VOC color products. All right, but at the same time we wanted to improve the performance of the colorants. So we now have we're using a green oxide, for instance, that gives us a nice muted space, but it's an oxide, so it's going to be really, really good for exterior durability.
It's color fast, all these,
Colors fast.
All of them are-
Yeah,
all of them are-
we used
Like the hide is incredibly improved.
hides
Like,
incredibly.
You don't even know that colorant
Yeah.
can affect how the paint performs.
Yeah,
so
we-
throughout the system, all of the colors are color fast?
Yeah, everything's color fast. We have you know, again, we have some, like one of the things you have with trade sales colorants is you get a, like bright reds. We have the best bright red light fastness colorant you can get, but it's not as light fast as an automotive red, because it's about 5 times less expensive than an automotive red, and it's still very expensive. Okay?
I would imagine 5 times more expensive than the traditional colorants. Perhaps
Well, you're looking at for
$200-300 an ounce? Or
Yeah.
I mean a quart?
yeah,
Or more,
well, more than that.
Yeah.
We have
$5 a squirt?
Well, look, we're now looking at, we have a yellow that's a bismuth vanadate yellow, that is a
Bismuth?
bismuth vanadate yellow, Biva yellow, and it sells for $135 a quart. Okay, but it is
What
the
does that
most
compare to,
light
Tom?
fast yellow.
Can you give a comparison to,
Price wise,
yeah, like, so if that's 130 for a quart of yellow, what's a?
traditional organic yellow might go for about $40, $45 a quart, but it's about 10 times as light fast. We did an exposure on our test fence in Florida. We put a yellow out, and there's a measure of color difference. It's called delta E. All right, and the traditional yellow, after about 9 months on the fence, the delta E was 28. So the change in the color from the original to where it was then was 28, which means the yellow had pretty much disappeared. The new bismuth vanadate yellow, the change was 1.2. And this is South Florida at 45 degrees exterior. So a severe fade resistance test. We also have in here a product called Cobalt Blue. If you're an artist, you know cobalt blue. And these things are much stronger. We've reformulated all of the colors in this palette. Every one of these colors will cover in a maximum of 2 coats. Most of them would cover in 1 coat. A good painter like yourself, I'm sure, could get it done in 1 coat.
So
But
what you're telling me is if I decide to paint a wall and curtain call, and it's a white wall right now, brand new GWB and a coat of primer, and we're brought in to paint,
2 coats max.
that, or how about Bluebeard is a very
2
deep
coats
blue.
max.
So it'd be a
We've
dream. It would be a dream
reformulated-
for anybody who's painting.
We've reformulated all these things. You're familiar, we had to come out with this accent color system primer because we had some of these colors that just didn't look good. They didn't cover real well.
There were a few points that needed
Yeah,
3 or 4
they,
coats.
and so we've replaced those. We've reformulated everything in this, and you know, we upgrade our color system every 4 years or so. We take a look at it every 2 to 3 years, but it takes another year to get everything done. So we're introducing new colors in the fall. I think it's what,
88.
88 new colors in the fall. So we're going to retire 88 colors and introduce 88 new colors. You mentioned,
Or 66, I can't remember.
no, I think it's 88. You mentioned earlier that a lot of color systems, only 20% of the palette works.
It's purchased.
we are able to gather data from our dispensing equipment, so we know exactly how many colors are purchased. And this system here, it's 55 to 60% of the colors represent 80% of what we do. So the old 80-20 rule, 20% of the colors would represent 80% of what you do. With us, it's
Pareto principle.
yeah, with us, it's 60% of the colors represent 80% of what we do. So the color system works hard. And the new system is gorgeous, okay? At the same time, we've developed a relationship with Barry Dixon. And Barry Dixon's a well-known designer on the East Coast. I think he's done some work, a decent amount of work through Farrell and Ball.
He put them on the map.
And we
That's my
are,
opinion.
we're pleased to really introduce what we refer to as the Naturals Collection of Colors by Barry Dixon. He put all of these colors together
I heard from
from his farm.
yeah.
From his farm in Virginia. That was the inspiration for all the colors. And this is hot off the press. Okay,
Ow.
it's the only one that. That's interesting.
We're rolling. Oh yeah.
That's interesting.
John, I like how your shirt goes with the drawing.
Well, as I was saying, you make drawdowns. In the laboratories, we make drawdowns over a chart that the top half is black, the bottom half is white. And then we do a measurement over the black half and a measurement over the white half, divided them into each other, and get what's called a contrast ratio. Now, if the color over the white half and the color over the black half were identical, the contrast ratio would be 1.00. All right. All of these colors in here have contrast ratios that are, let's say, 0.994 or better. All right. The accepted definition of hiding in the paint industry is 0.98 or better. These are all 0.994 or better in terms of how they hide, how they cover. So you're going to get 1 or 2 coat coverage at the maximum. So I say 2 coats because no matter how good a painter you are, there are always holidays. Always.
Tell me the story of how you approached Barry Dixon. Heavyweight in the design industry, definitely an original.
We We developed a relationship with someone in the Washington D.C. area whose name is Colleen Scully. And she did some work for one of our partners in the Washington D.C. area, Houseworks. And Colleen knew Barry Dixon. And Colleen was very, very excited about the color palette. And she felt that Barry would be equally excited about the color palette. So she presented the color palette to him, and he was very excited about it. Wanted to meet us, wanted to see if we could set up a relationship together, and we have. And we have. And we're very delighted with the relationship. It's you know, he's been speaking on our behalf somewhat now. He was at our annual meeting in Cancun in February, but we now have this color card is now just now being introduced. Just now it's being introduced.
And when will the worldwide launch be?
It's going to be through Barry, so we have to ship a number of cards to him, like 500, and then set up when he's going to introduce it. I believe that we should have a notice out to Robin and our other partners by the end of the week that they can order these things. We have 4,000 of them in our office in Buffalo right now. So we're just working through how the logistics of how we ship them and all that.
Let's play Guess the C2 paint color.
Not me.
I'm just kidding. Here-
Robin would be the one.
We have stacks and stacks of these for all of our clients.
Robin would be the guess the paint
These
color.
were stacks, but these are all C2 eggshell drawdowns for clients.
Yeah, I'm not the guess the paint color guy. I believe it or not, I'm a paint chemist. I'm a purist as a paint chemist. And when you put colorant in my paint, you contaminate it. I don't care how much or how little colorant you put in my paint, it's a contaminant. So my objective now I recognize that I'm probably the only one who wants to use white paint everywhere. All right. However, the more colorant you put in, the more contamination there is. So my objective in designing colorants and color systems is to use as little colorant as possible in the paint, so that the properties of the paint are not marginalized in any way. All right, and I kind of laugh about it being a contaminant because, you know, you have the artistic side of the company, and then you have the technical side of the company, and there's always a natural tension between the two of us. All right, so so I know. I'm probably more. You could probably more show me a paint film, and I could probably tell you, you know, what the paint is and what day it was made and all that stuff. But if you tell me a color and you say, you know, what color is that? I don't know. I'm going to say it's a nice color, you know, but that's about all I'm going to be able to tell you. Would know what color these things are.
Tom, Robin had asked a question earlier. I'm going to have you address it. Let's see here if I have one. Let's talk about black.
Yes.
The absence of black.
Yes.
What is black? Is black a color? Where does it fit in the whole paint world?
Well, black is a dechromatizer. Okay, it moves more towards the grayscale.
There's black.
Yeah.
There's black.
Black
There's
takes
black.
you. Black takes you to the grayscale. Black's it's beautiful. I mean, if you like.
No, hold on a second. What does it mean, take you to the grayscale? For someone who
Well,
doesn't.
all right. The colors are three-dimensional. All right, and there's a lightness darkness scale, which is the grayscale. 100 is pure white. 0 is the absence of white or black. Okay, that's 0. And then you've got an L scale at LAB. L is lightness, darkness. A is red and green. B is yellow and blue. on either side of those things are yellow and blue. And depending on where a color is in color space, it has this LAB signature, all right? Now, what black does is it takes the color from, let's say it's real light and bright, to muted and grayer. So it moves it down on the gray scale. That's what black does, and it's referred to as a dechromatizer. Now, artists generally don't use black because they prefer to dechromatize by blending colors to get down in color space. That's why artists use all the complements, split complements, you know, and they try to do that to get down in color space. They use there's a lot of umbers. So you'll find in our new color system there's a lot of umber that's used as a dechromatizer as opposed to black. Black kind of mutes the color. It really has an effect on the color. Excuse me. And we've tried to design the system from an artist palette perspective.
Can you speak about the team at C2, the dealers? What do they bring? What happens when you guys meet, when you pick the colors?
Well, let me explain what C2 is like right now. C2 is a virtual company. And when I mean a virtual company, I do mean a virtual company. We have marketing resources that are headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia. And we have them on retainer. They're not full-time employees. We have research and development in Clearwater, Florida. It's on retainer. We have manufacturing in Andover, Massachusetts. That's excess capacity from a paint manufacturing company. We have PRs in New York City, legals in Buffalo, New York, accountings in Buffalo, New York. And we coordinate everything in Buffalo, New York. Now, the way we're able to do this is each of our partners in this business serves on a different committee if they choose to. For instance, Robin Daly is the chair of our marketing committee, and they handle everything we do marketing-wise. Philip Reno of GNR Paint in San Francisco's chair of the color committee. So when we're selecting new colors and doing all the color work, his committee is focused around doing that. We have a product committee. Sean Clark at Waters and Brown and outside of Boston is chair of that. So we look at new products, we look at how the products are performing, how the products are selling, what do we need to do, what don't we need to do. We have a finance committee, we have an executive committee, and that's how we run the company. So we essentially have a focus group every day because these people are dealing with the end users all the time. So it's not like a big company where it's the independent dealer talks to their salesperson, who talks to their district manager, who talks to the area manager, who talks to the VP of this, who talks to, you get right to the top right away. The other thing is generally if you have problems with anything, people call me. Everybody has my cell number. Everybody, they call me and we get things taken care of very quickly. There's not a lot of bureaucracy in our decision-making process, so we're relatively nimble.
Tom, talk to me about C2 cabinet and trim paint. Definitely unique. I know there's a regional association with the university, and the research that went into how to use that byproduct. I've used it. It's definitely unique.
It is unique. Yeah, it is unique. We stumbled across this. I mean, this is one of these serendipitous things that occurs if you're open to other opportunities. The company in Vermont, Vermont Natural Coatings, did some work with the University of Vermont, and what they were trying to do was find a utilization for whey, which is a waste product in cheese manufacture. So there's an organic dairy that produces all this organic milk that's used in producing organic cheese, but then there's a waste product that's called whey. Well, the University of Vermont came up with a way to produce, a means to produce a whey polymer, and this whey polymer was used in a clear finish for floors and wood furniture and things of that nature. Well, a couple of our partners started to blend this clear in a specific ratio with our satin finish, and came up with a really unique feeling, smooth, great flow and leveling, positive curing finish that really works great for cabinets and trim. And we did a significant amount of work with them to try to get this thing working, because there are always little things going on. For instance, they were blending this 25% to 75% paint, or 50% to 50% paint. Well, when you do that, you reduce the hiding of the finished product. So it would be a lot better if we could get this blended in the manufacturing stage and not reduce the hiding. So we did a lot of work to do that. We found that there were some incompatibilities between a number of things. There's just all the things that happen in R&D. Well, we ended up with this cabinet and trim finish that really does a nice job. It's a unique product. Right now it's in a satin finish. We're working on a semi-gloss finish currently. I don't think we're going to have a gloss finish with it, because unfortunately the product, when it's blended with our paint, lowers the gloss a little bit. So there's a natural limit to how high you can go in gloss. Products that are similar, have another unique story to this. So it's you're getting rid of a waste product, and it's a sustainable product. I mean, we're still going to always be drinking milk, and everybody's going to be eating cheese, so they got to get rid of the whey. Kids, that's a phenomena that's called blocking. All right, and if you put colors together face to face, sometimes they'll block depending on how new they are. I mean, we have the old way of getting rid of blocking is you put some talcum powder on it, or you rub it with wax paper, and then it doesn't block anymore. All right, but it would be with latex paints, it would be much more desirable if they didn't block initially. The problem is that traditional resins, well, even non-traditional resins, generally are going to provide some blocking unless you run them through an oven. And the whey polymer, the whey product in our paint eliminates the blocking problem.
A question that you probably didn't expect. Most people think of C2 colors, low VOC, water base. We discovered last year working on an older home that your oil-based primer is pretty good. Now I know I can probably put 2 and 2 together. You worked on Cellutone, you have a long history of working on those paints. That, I don't want to call it a control primer because that's not what you've labeled it, but the C2 exterior primer it's been our favorite for when there's a problem when we want to treat brand new wood. Speak to how that's different. It is different, I know that.
The oil-based primer is what's referred to as a very long oil alkyd. All right, and what that means is that the percentage of oil to the product that converts it to an alkyd, it's a higher ratio of oil to the alkyd. Okay, and that gives you better penetration into the wood. It gives you better sealing. Now, the downside of the longer oil length alkyds is sometimes they take a little longer to dry. So that's the downside to them. But they penetrate better and they have terrific adhesion. So that's what they're good at. Now, the other downside to these things is as VOC regs get tighter and tighter and tighter, they may disappear.
Were you the driving force behind that?
What, the oil base the way it is? Making-
It's definitely different. I noticed that
Yeah.
for sure.
Well, we made sure, what we did is made sure that the product did that. Okay, I made sure it did that. We don't, look,
promote that product.
our research laboratory in Florida doesn't do any alkyd research. Okay? I'm probably the only one left in the company that knows anything about making alkyds. So I know what to look for. All right, so yeah, I point us in the right directions, but there aren't that many people in the country anymore that are making good alkyds. And it's going to, again, as the regs get tighter and tighter, they will sooner or later, unfortunately, they're going to disappear. Although, because this is a specialty product, okay, and we, well, you may want to edit this, but we put on the label that it's a stain blocker. So putting it on a label as a stain blocker gets us into a different VOC category, so we can keep the VOCs up.
Yeah.
So,
John has us saying, I heart VOCs.
well, I don't. You don't even want to get me into. You don't even want to get me into that discussion at all. I mean, that's a.
I'm an oil-based guy, by the way.
Well, look, you know, there is no definitive science that proves that VOCs cause ozone.
Dan, can you grab one of our T-shirts and bring it out?
There is no definitive science that
No, I just want to.
it goes.
We'd like to show the founder of the art.
See, the problem, you know, I'm an organic chemist by training. All right, the number of equations that it takes for a VOC to get to a something that's going to cause a problem, it's like 20 different steps it has to go through. So,
I'd like for you to take this home with you. This is our sheer shirt. The front of it says "We Heart Alkyd."
well,
Thank you for
It's-
coming. Thank you for coming out.
you're welcome.
And thank
You're
you for
welcome.
thank you for spilling the beans on the
Yeah,
oil base.
oil-based stuff it's great stuff. But now, let me tell you what I think the downside to oil-based stuff is.
Okay.
You know, it flows and levels great. It gets as hard as can be. You know, and it gets harder and harder as it cures, and
There's
it
no
washes
elasticity to it.
well. And yeah, all right, now it cracks. It'll you know, if there's dimensionally unstable substrate, it'll crack. My real hang up with oil-based products is they yellow over time. That's my big hang up with oil-based products, and acrylic products don't yellow. So now if you, again, when I was at Pratt & Lambert, we manufactured our own resins, and we made like Vitrolite out of coconut oil. Coconut oil doesn't yellow. And we made 38 clear out of safflower oil. Safflower oil doesn't yellow.
Is that why Vitrolite smelled differently 15 years ago?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It had a sweet smell to it.
Yeah. And we made it out of those oils because they were non-yellowing oils. You know, like you know, the finishes that you put on refrigerators and washing machines, they're all made from those types of oils so that they're non-yellow. Soya, linseed oil, those are yellowing oils. Those are yellowing oils. So that's my only hang-up with Alkyd finishes. So.
Thank you. Why is it called C2?
We started wanting to call the brand Collections of Colors. Unfortunately, Collections of Colors was already trademarked by someone else. We then tried C Squared. That was trademarked by someone else. We then found that C2 was not trademarked. Now this is after we'd gone through about 30 potential names. So we wanted something that was kind of short, clever, easy to remember. And one of our partners in Providence, Rhode Island, early on was interviewed for an article in the US Air magazine, and they asked him, why did you call it C2? He said, we wanted something our customers could spell. and I said, you didn't say that, did you? But he did say that. So he's, if you know him, he's very tongue-in-cheek. So, but it was, we started Collections of Colors. CC, we couldn't do that. C Squared, we couldn't do that. But C2 we could mark. So we did.